On Sunday, we had the Azerbaijan Grand Prix at Baku, and it was not the most exciting race I have ever watched in my entire life. In fact, the best thing about it was that I got to watch it with my childhood friend Austin. I got to, we played t-ball together. His dad was a coach. I saw his newborn baby. He came on last year and talked about the Stanley Cup Finals. So I sat next to him on the couch and we watched the race, and that was fun. But the race itself, there was no sustained drama. It was not very tense or that interesting. All of the drama or excitement came in the form of retirements in short bursts because it wasn't sustained. And the biggest story from Baku is that Ferrari had a double DNF. On lap 9, Carlos Sainz had engine failure and had to retire the car. He was in 4th place. And then on lap 20 of 51, Charles Leclerc had to retire. He was in 1st place. And so that's a painful loss. And Ferrari keeps missing out on good opportunities. And, Leclerc has had 2 retirements in the last 3 races. Both times, by the way, he was in 1st place. That is awful. And so for Ferrari to walk away with 0 points at Baku and Red Bull getting a 1-2 finish, just the amount of the gap that Red Bull has built now between them and Ferrari is really painful if you're a Ferrari fan. In this race, Max Verstappen won. He got 1st. Sergio Perez got 2nd. And then to round out the podium, George Russell got 3rd for Mercedes. I got a couple things to say. Number one, Ferrari engines really, really struggled this weekend. Zhou Guanyu had engine failure in his Alfa Romeo. Kevin Magnussen's Haas had engine failure. Both of the Ferraris failed. So that's 4 Ferrari-powered engines having failure in one race. That's not good. And it's really funny to me how the narrative has shifted because early on in the year, Red Bull was known as the team with an unreliable car. That is slowly shifting towards Ferrari. And by the way, Ferrari, their team principal, Mattia Binotto, he was like a mechanic. Like he is he's a guy who, they can't have these problems based on who Mattia Binotto is. And I'm getting, every week I'm more and more skeptical of him. But now watching this, I'm like, that's your specialty. I believe he built engines for Ferrari before becoming team principal. So it's like, if you're just Ferrari is just really getting in their own way. And it feels like this is a year where they could have won a lot. They had a lot of things going for them, and they just cannot capitalize. Now, Mercedes. First of all, this is the worst car Mercedes has had in years. Their car has an aerodynamic problem. There's a ton of bouncing, or what you call porpoising, where it's doing this a lot. And you see Lewis Hamilton bouncing up and down as he drives, which looks painful and horrible. It's hurting their drivers. Lewis Hamilton, after the race, could barely get out of his car because of back pain. Another thing to talk about, though, with Ferrari, another thing we have to talk about is that George Russell is massively outperforming Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is a 6-7 world champion. And is George a better driver than Lewis? It's hard to believe that based on all the world championships that Lewis has won. So is George a better driver, or is he maybe just handling the porpoising problem better? I don't know if these factors have any. I'm going to research this, actually. It'd be really interesting to find out. Lewis Hamilton is 5'8". He's 37 years old. George Russell's 24 and 6'1". I don't know if height helps with porpoising, or maybe just having a younger back, literally, being 13 years younger helps George Russell handle it better. But certainly Ferrari's struggling, but Mercedes is really struggling too. And the fact they're hanging around Ferrari is surprising at all based on how bad their car is. And I don't know. It's been years since I've seen a Mercedes car this bad in Formula One. Now, George has finished every race in the top 5. That's very impressive. Lewis Hamilton has only finished ahead of George Russell one time this year. It was the very first race of the year in Bahrain. Lewis was 3rd. George was 4th. George has 99 points this year. Lewis has 62. Right now, George is the best Mercedes driver. I also, after this race, want to give a shout-out to Daniel Ricciardo. McLaren took a risk with their strategy with Daniel Ricciardo. They started with hard tires. Everyone else was pretty much on mediums. And Danny Rick stayed out the longest of anyone before taking a pit stop. And it was getting dangerous where, he was going to have to pit because his tires are wearing down. But luckily, on lap 33, right about the peak time where you got to take a pit stop, Kevin Magnussen had power failure, and that led to a virtual safety car, and Daniel Ricciardo was able to take a pit stop without a huge penalty. That allowed Danny Rick to get 9th place and a points finish, which, man, if you know what's going on with him, he really, really needed it. By the way, I saw another thing that I've never seen before in Formula One. Yuki Tsunoda had, I mean, maybe the only thing I've ever, this is the thing I saw this weekend that I'd never seen before in Formula One. That's a better way to put that. Yuki Tsunoda had a super weird rear wing failure where it like ripped in half. And I don't know if, so half of it went up and half of it didn't move. And I wonder, like, is the mechanism to open the DRS more powerful than the force on the rear wing itself? Clearly not. Like, how did that rip? I'd love to see the moment that it did rip for the first time. Because almost like one side was jammed down and one side went up. And because of, it's so powerful that it opened and ripped the carbon fiber. Like, that's unbelievable to me. And then what's even more hilarious is that they duct taped it together, which led to a lot of great memes on Twitter. And they told Yuki, no more DRS. Just try to finish the race. He didn't get any points. He was actually in the points when that happened. Very unlucky for him. But I want to see, that deserves like a replay or a lot more research. And I looked into it. I couldn't find much more, but I want to see if there's video of the first moment it happened and it did rip, because that's really fascinating to me. Now, after Sunday's race, here are the standings in Formula One. We'll start with the team or constructors standings as followed. Red Bull's in first with 279 points. Then there's a big gap. Then Ferrari's in second with 199 points. Then in third is Mercedes with 161 points. In fourth is McLaren. They have 65 points, way down. Alpine is in fifth with 47 points. Alfa Romeo in sixth with 41 points. Alfa Tauri in seventh with 27 points. Haas is in eighth with 15 points. Aston Martin is in ninth, also with 15 points. I think Haas just got there first, so they're one position ahead. And then Williams is in 10th with 3 points. It's kind of cool. Every team in Formula One right now has points, and that doesn't happen every year. And when the driver standings, you have Max Verstappen in first with 150 points, and then Sergio Perez in second with 129 points. The two Red Bull drivers are in 1 and 2 in the standings, in the driver standings. And Sergio Perez right now has not as much pace as Max Verstappen, it seems like, but certainly does have a real chance here to, I don't know if challenge Max is the right word, but this could lead to some interesting discussions. If they're racing, do you deny Sergio Perez a shot at the World Championship to keep your number one driver, Max Verstappen, ahead? I know Sergio Perez has been a saint and a god and the best teammate I've ever seen in my entire life in any sport. I can't believe how egoless he is, but you think he's going to give up a shot at a world title? That's a lot to ask of anyone, even a really giving, great teammate like Sergio Perez. That's a debate. We'll see. It feels like there's more storyline to be had there between Max and Sergio, and I can't tell if that's because I am building drama up or if there really is something there, but wow, that's shocking to me. In third place in Formula One is Charles Leclerc with 116 points. Then in fourth is George Russell with 99 points. Carlos Sainz is in fifth with 83 points, and Lewis Hamilton is in sixth with 62 points. Daniel Ricciardo, a fan favorite, 13th with 15 points, and Sebastian Vettel, 14th with 13 points. Seb and Danny Rick are struggling, man, and I'm waiting for Daniel Ricciardo to come back to what I know he's capable of, or at least what he was years ago with Red Bull. We haven't seen peak Daniel Ricciardo in a long, long time. Same with Sebastian Vettel, and I know they're not in the best cars, but Seb, I mean, that Aston Martin car must really be struggling. He keeps spinning out and having like little problems, but I will say this to credit Sebastian Vettel. He had one of the coolest moments I've ever seen in my life where he went through the runoff and then did a quick spin and spun all the way around. Like, that showed so much control of the car, where he did like a 180 with one spin of the wheels in the runoff, which has like such a low margin for error. That was very cool, but Seb needs to be better. So does Danny Rick. And it was a huge weekend for Red Bull. They really widened the gap between them and Ferrari. And the storyline this weekend is that, Ferrari, man, you can't miss out on that many points and then allow your rival to get a 1-2 finish and get all the points and fastest lap. So max points for Red Bull, no points for Ferrari. Really, really painful weekend if you're a Ferrari fan. What do they call them? The Tifosi, I think, is their fan base. So anyway, The Azerbaijan Grand Prix was fun. It wasn't fun necessarily, but it created a lot of interesting impacts leading off of it. And so I'm excited for the rest of the year. I hope you're enjoying Formula One like I am. And yeah, it was a race with consequences is how I would put it. There's a lot that's gonna there's a lot's gonna happen in the follow up to this race in Formula One.